Yes guys, so this is David Street in Kitty. It's tasty dishes. What I want to show you here is a couple of new buildings. These two buildings that are being constructed here on David Street, Kitty, very close to the intersection with Blasingian Road. Right, so I've showed you a number of videos recently, like I said, of new hotels being constructed in Georgetown, in Guyana. And what I did not include in some of the previous videos that I've made is the amazing pace at which new residential and commercial buildings are being constructed in Guyana. But I wanted to comment on the construction of residential buildings and commercial buildings in Guyana by comparing it to international standards and also by comparing it to what is being constructed around Georgetown in those hotels. So notice carefully what the frame of this building is made of. It's made of reinforced concrete. So these are concrete pillars with rebar inside the frames. Now the building code in Guyana says that before this building can be constructed, there should be a soil test, right? There has to be a soil test to determine the kind of foundation that is required. And usually in Georgetown, because of a clay soil, a building that is taller than 3 stories requires pile driving. You need to drive piles into the ground to support the foundation and the weight of the building above. So this building is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories and counting, and it goes all the way from David Street, right from David Street here in Kitty. It extends the entire block to Gordon Street, which is the next street south of David Street. This is another 4-story building that was built probably 20 years ago. But take a look at this, take note of this. So what I've been doing is showing you construction of hotels, King's Hotel in the last video, and before that I showed you the Best Western and 2 Marriott hotels, AC Marriott at Ogle and the Courtyard Marriott at Timeri. And the thing about those hotels that are being constructed, the multi-story hotels, usually about 6 floors, 6 stories, is that they have a steel frame. So they're made with I-beams, steel beams.
Distance 7 miles. Duration 2 hours, 3 minutes, 53 seconds. Pace 23 minutes, 48 seconds per mile.
So those hotels are being constructed with steel beams, I-beams, that are riveted together or welded together to form the frame. The problem is that these residential buildings, or maybe they are hotels, I don't know, we'll eventually know whether these are new hotels. These buildings, although they are similar in height, this is another 6-story building, right? 6 stories from, counting the ground floor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories. I don't know if they're going to put another floor above it, but so this is what is happening here. And the problem I have, I'm going to show you before the end of this video, a 3rd building. That one was abandoned for a long time, and somebody is now starting to rebuild it, to continue building it. But here we are, right? This is Gordon Street in Kitty. Here we are looking at construction of new residential buildings, or maybe this is another hotel, I don't know yet, but it's in a residential neighborhood. Right, this is Gordon Street, Kitty. And the point I'm making in this video is that the quality of construction is questionable. Firstly, I question whether in fact they built the right foundation, the correct foundation for this tall structure in this residential neighborhood. In other words, I didn't see pile driving. I didn't see anyone driving piles into the foundation here. And secondly, I question whether whatever they built here is in concrete, right, 100% concrete. The walls are concrete. The frame is reinforced concrete. That's rebar that is molded into concrete pillars. I question whether this kind of building is in fact safe. The problem with these buildings, tall buildings now, referring to tall buildings, 6 and 7 stories, is that they require much more careful engineering than the typical 2-story buildings and wooden houses that are usually constructed in Georgetown. And I'm not so sure, I am not convinced that these buildings meet international standards for safety. We've all heard of buildings collapsing in China, buildings collapsing in Bangladesh and India, and typically they are these kinds of buildings because building with concrete floors and concrete roofs, concrete walls, concrete pillars has two problems. One is the weight of the structure is enormous, right? It's compared to a steel frame building with panels, whether it be fabric panels or even concrete panels. Those buildings weigh less than a fully concrete building such as this. So what actually happens if you don't have a proper foundation is the building begins to shift and you see cracks in the walls, and if there's a slight tremor, a slight earth tremor, the building can pancake and come down, collapse on itself. And this is what I'm concerned about, that in the rapid rush to develop Georgetown, and in Guyana in particular, right, because we have the fastest growing economy in the world, you have these contractors who are constructing buildings like this that are not necessarily safe, don't necessarily meet international standards for building construction globally. So the danger is that these kinds of buildings are not properly regulated for safety, and they don't follow international rules. The next problem I have with these buildings is that it seems as if no structural engineer, no architect was used. This is what I refer to as a monstrosity, right? There is no architectural feature, there is no grand statement in the design of this building. It's just a bunch of blocks placed one above the other to form 7 stories or 6 stories, and as a result they contribute to the uglification of Georgetown. Right now, I don't know if uglification is a word, but just like beautification, the opposite of beautification is uglification. This is what I refer to as uglification of the city, because no architect, or at least no architect who takes pride in his construction, his buildings, his designs, was involved in the construction of these buildings. And this is what's happening more and more, right? So look at this. This is a building that was demolished, a house, residential building that was demolished. And the tendency is to build taller and build bigger buildings in the same space. And again, if you don't hire an architect because you want to save money, you end up building something that is a monstrosity. And that's the other side of the coin. Right, that's the other side of the problem. See, on this side, that's the Camp and Ghana. As I said before, that's the army base here in Georgetown. See, they're also constructing a new building on their campus, new concrete building. And what is common in all these buildings is that they have no architectural detail. Now finally, I want to comment on this new building, or this building that is now being constructed or completed after 20 years. This is, I think somebody started construction on this building 25 years ago and then abandoned it 20 years ago. And now it seems to be under construction again. It's going to be completed now. This is another 6-story building. At least you can see there's some effort to include stairs, fire escape, stairs on the outside, which means that somebody is paying attention to the building codes. The building code says you can't build a 6-story building in Georgetown without an external fire escape, stairs. So somebody's paying attention to that. But this building is located at the corner of Sandy Bab Street and Blessington Road in Kitty. And I'm not sure what it was when they started constructing it, but it seems to be under construction now, 25 years after they started. It seems to be completed as a hotel. So I don't know which hotel this is going to be, but it seems as if this is going to be a new hotel here in Georgetown, Kitty, that is close to the Camp and Ghana, which is the army base. Camp and Ghana and Irving Street. And I can see there are construction workers who are still working on building. Right, construction workers are working on that building. And they seem to be balconies. They have balconies on each floor, each level, and what appears to be some kind of roof garden on the construction. Bar Street in Kitty. At the end of this, in fact, next intersection I believe is Kitty Market. That's Bar Street and Blessington Road. So yes, now opposite this building opposite this building on Sandy Bab Street is the old GR Burgers building. I think I did a video of GR Burger, that restaurant that was the busiest business place on Sandy Bab Street about 10 years ago. So the location is interesting. So I don't know if they're completing this as a hotel or if they're completing it as a condominium or apartment building. But like I said again, this is another building built in the old format. It does not have a steel frame. It was built with reinforced concrete. Oh, the third problem which I forgot to explain about reinforced concrete is that over time the rebar inside the concrete begins to corrode and expand, and when that happens the concrete cracks. And so over a period of 20 years or so, 15 to 20 years, you get a building that starts to deteriorate from the inside. There's a couple of guys working on the building there. You have a building that starts to deteriorate, starts to corrode on the inside, gets weaker, and because it's hidden, because the rebar inside the concrete pillars is hidden and they begin to expand when they corrode, the weakening of the building goes unnoticed and then it collapses suddenly. The example of that is what happened in Florida. Right, there were a couple of buildings that collapsed in Florida in the last couple of years, and the idea is that the structure became weaker over time and should have been abandoned or demolished, but wasn't. So that's the danger of constructing these kinds of buildings. But that's the other side of construction, guys. That's the other side of construction I want to point out here in Georgetown, is that while they're building these massive hotels, 9-story buildings, at least those buildings are being built by engineers and architects who are mimicking or copying standards that are global or international. These new buildings, however, they are not. They're being built by locals who are following some very old technological standards and are therefore potentially very dangerous. But that's what's up, guys. Tell me in the comments below what you think about the quality of construction, even as the country, the economy expands rapidly. My concern is that the quality of what we're building is not always of the best, it's not always the safest, it's not always the highest, and that we ought to be really paying careful attention to what is happening. In the construction industry. If you want to see more content like this, click like and subscribe. Share this video with friends and family around the world. Let people know what's happening here in the fastest growing economy in the Caribbean, in the world, Guyana. Later!